Hey people out there, and welcome to episode 44 of DoubleDM. So first up, I gotta tell you that today on Sunday we are recording session 0 of Titan's Call, which may be pushed to episode -1 for podcasting purposes, as it's the actual session 0 of the character creation, world building, homebrew rules, safety tools, and so on. But I'm very excited and maybe just a little too anxious already. Moving on, we want to congratulate Bards and Brews, Klaus von H, and also Hope for TTRPGs for their charity livestream event Death Grind for Charity and the amount of money they raised for Extra Life. It was an amazing event, I loved watching it, you guys did great work. Going over to other stuff is that Niels and I decided that there will be no regular episode of DoubleDM on the 26th of December, but a more lighthearted episode. The Q&A we had for our 2k followers will go up on that day, where we will answer just every question we got and a little bit more different questions to let people know about us, because we can't record and edit an episode for that date. And with that, there's nothing left for me to do but to ask you to give us a nice review, a 5-star rating, or follow on your podcasting platform. And with that, enjoy episode 44, GM Tricks.
Hello and welcome to DoubleDM episode 44. With me today is, as usual, my lovely co-host Emil. How are you today?
Fine.
Everything good?
Yeah.
Anything specific happen?
No?
No? Then shall we get into it?
Sure.
Then what happened?
I don't know.
Oh boy.
I just need to collect my thoughts. Okay. Well, on Tuesday I had a session.
Okay, what was it about?
We just last session walked into this big portal and now plopped out of that portal on the other side in the plane of lizard folk and dinosaurs.
Okay. Scaly folk plane.
We found we walked a little bit through the jungle and found a beast, a dinosaur beast in a trap. It helped it escape. And what we found out is that thing is genetically modified. So yes, Jurassic World, this thing is everything. It's a raptor, it's a T-Rex, it's alpha beast, it's a frog, it's a fucking snail, whatever it is, right?
Nice.
No, these weird lizard folk and dragons that live in this plane as well seem to have a gladiatorial arena for dinosaurs.
Okay, yeah, okay. Gladiatorial combat of dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Sure.
If you ever wanted to see a T-Rex versus a T-Rex, that's where you're gonna find it.
Okay, yeah, would be a good place to start off a fun Friday night, I think.
As long as you're not a dinosaur.
True. Or even if you put people against the dinosaurs,
Maybe.
wouldn't be so fun to be the person there as well, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Fighting against a beast with teeth half as big as you. Yeah.
Fighting against a dinosaur is ugly, I think.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it.
I'm not trained to do that.
Yeah, neither am I.
I'm not trained to do it, so no. So, please, Niels, tell me, did anything happen for you?
Yeah, I had a session as well.
Ooh.
In the Curse of Strahd campaign we are playing right now.
Ooh.
And we fought a vampire spawn at level 3, and again, my barbarian nearly died because I can't have necrotic damage, which I took a lot of. I hated it, kind of, but I loved it. You know? Weird.
I mean, if you're into that sort of thing.
Yeah, not really, but the combat as a whole was a nice experience. Because then suddenly the vampire spawn started walking on the ceiling, my barbarian jumped and pulled it back down, and then everyone just went to town on it, then we grappled with it a bit, and it was just a good overall fun encounter. But yeah, after all the necrotic damage from the bite attacks and stuff that I received, I was back at my hit point maximum from level 1. So yeah, all the level up hit point maximum was reduced. And now I am back at 15 hit points. At level 3, I feel like a wizard.
Wait, how do you restore that again? Is it just a long rest? Is it lesser restoration something? Okay.
I think both works. But yeah.
Okay. I have to say, I've talked about this on an episode that's scheduled to release at some point with Homie and the Dude. I think it's kind of releasing before or right at the moment of this episode as well. There isn't really like you just have to sleep, right? And in D&D, I don't know if that's maybe just me, but long rests seem too easy.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, now what you do after this combat is just say, okay, I'm gonna pause, or I'm gonna find the next spot where I can take this break and just take the long rest and be fine with it. Like,
that's why I always wanted to try out the gritty realism resting rules from the Dungeon Master's Guide, making a whole night the short rest and 1 week of downtime the long rest.
Yeah.
So you have time to tend to your wounds and stuff.
I don't actually know. I think the problem with that is that the rest of D&D isn't designed around that.
Yeah.
You would have to probably also change a lot about the style of how many combats you run, how you run the combats, and to accommodate that. Because if you do long rest is just 1 night of sleeping, like for example, the rules are like 4 or 8 encounters, normal encounters per day per long rest.
Yeah.
For characters, nobody's gonna run 4 combats a day. At least not that I know of. So my combats are just always in the scale of deadliness. Just they're always deadly because I mostly only have 1 or 2, and that's it per day.
Because
per long rest
running
for them.
4 to 8 encounters per long rest is a lot. It's just it can drag on really quick. So
yeah, I mean that's also basically what you have to. Okay, yeah. For early levels, it's just throwing 2 or 3 kobolds against the party and just hitting with swords. But like at 10th level, it's a dragon that the party has to fight. Where they can use like 5th level spells, the dragon can use a breath attack, and everyone needs to roll like 10 dice before a round is over.
Yeah,
that's dragging on. Yeah, no, but I don't know if these gritty realism rules actually are good. I haven't tried them. That's what I have to say. I haven't tried them, so maybe I'm just wrong here. But
yeah. That's exactly the reason why I haven't tried them out yet, because you have to rearrange so much of your thinking around your prep work for this campaign if you use the gritty realism rules, which I was not ready to do, or which I didn't want to do at the moment, but I always wanted to try and see how it works out.
Maybe one could do this for one shot, saying, hey, let's do a one-shot. It's an exploration-based one-shot. You're venturing into the jungle and you have to find a temple or something. And it's not even about the dungeon run in the temple, but just going through this deadly jungle and try that out, maybe.
Yeah, or a mini campaign of like 4 to 6 sessions or something like that, to have the downtime at least once in there somewhere.
Yeah,
that could be one thing.
Yeah, just something like that. That maybe like a jungle exploration mini campaign. Like you're part of an expedition. You've set up base camp, and you're supposed, as a group of 5 or 4 or 6, whatever, are supposed to venture out into the jungle and scout the area. Maybe find this temple that's been made aware by the scouts already, and venture into this temple. And then you have to walk out and walk to this temple for like a week, then come back and then rest up, and then maybe do something else.
Yeah, it would need a specific sort of campaign theme to go with those rules.
I think if you say we're playing gritty realism rules, you have to well, first of all, obviously you need to make that clear to your players in the beginning.
Yeah.
But that's something probably everyone does with these rules. But just generally, I believe that most people would probably set their campaign around it being a gritty realism rule. So
exactly,
a lot of exploration, probably a lot of simple deadly combat.
Yeah, and nothing too big on the combat side, definitely. And not, or at least not that frequent as in a normal campaign. Maybe one raid or something.
Say that. No, I think that they're probably gonna do the same amount of combat, because that's what the rules are supposed to do, right? With the same amount of combat, make the game harder.
Yeah,
period.
True.
If you change the number of combats, the rules won't work, because then you just apply, and then you just change both sides of the coin, and then something won't change.
No, that's something I have to experiment a bit with. Yeah. So, shall we get into the episode?
Anything else happened this week?
Nothing really.
Okay.
It was quiet. All right, then we'll hear you in a bit in the actual episode.
Bye-bye.
The Lords of Gallipay patron page is just as customizable as the Trail of Heroes character creation, allowing you to access different Lords of Gallipay content like character portrait, loot charts, and access to the game Trail of Heroes standard. If you sub at higher tiers, you gain the ability to vote for the next month's big content and access to maps every 2 weeks for you to use, plus access to all the bonus content for Trail of Heroes standard. Check out the patron page in the description below.
Check out Off Gods and Game Masters on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, the web, and Patreon. Videos and blog posts in the world building series take you step by step through one easy and comprehensive world building process. 3 pre-generated characters for various levels of D&D, and 3 random BBGs for people to use as the big bads of their own campaigns or for inspiration. Many ongoing world building projects with teaser articles. Off Gods and Game Masters provides custom Pantheon creation for your homebrew worlds as well as world building consultation. Pantheons and single gods include portfolios, rules for the gods in question, relationships, worshippers, and much more. Any custom work includes continued Q&A support. Patreons get work in progress materials, Patreon only articles, early access to video scripts, ad-free videos, a private Discord, and more as the tiers go up. Off Gods and Game Masters' mission is to help you make the best worlds you can for gaming or fiction. GemMedFirefly.com combines nerdy interest and aesthetic attitude into one awesome store. Find shirts of the highest quality and softest comfort along with home items such as mugs, blankets, and flags. Collections like the Dungeon Glitch geeky designs or the Spicy Not Safe for Work section offer a variety of unique graphics perfect for your message, attitude, and lifestyle. Profits from the shop have planted thousands of trees to fight hunger and climate change, while also supporting notable charities and game community causes. Check out the link below or visit gemfirefly.com and skim your favorite shirts right now.
And with that, we welcome you back to the episode. Today we talk about GM tricks, right?
Yeah.
What do you mean, or what do we mean by this?
So what this actually is more of little things GMs can do to achieve a certain, maybe even big outcome. Little things that require you nearly no effort, but just the conscious decision, I want to do this now, to then actually achieve something big in your players, their characters, the world, wherever, to make the game fun, interesting, intriguing, and cool for everyone. That's basically what I understand under a trick. Something very small that most GMs can basically use at the flick of a finger. Like a cantrip.
Like a cantrip.
The GM cantrips. We're talking about GM cantrips.
The sleight of hand for rogues is the equivalent of GM tricks for GMs, basically.
I'm calling it GM cantrips now.
GM cantrips, all right. The big plot points and stuff would be the spell slots then, in this analogy. All right, yeah. GM cantrips, yeah. I dig it. I'm all here for it.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about these GM cantrips.
Can I throw in something really quick before we actually get into talking about them?
Yeah, sure.
One thing that I thought about for every trick is everything you do at your table, virtual or physical table, can be a trick. Everything a DM can do is a trick. DMs are the biggest stage magicians you will ever find. A DM could do anything, and that could be a trick, because it maybe triggers a certain outcome in their players, a certain emotion, a certain feeling in their players. You can do everything. You could just smirk at your players in the right moment, and they will go crazy. You can just say the right word, and your players will go crazy. And you can do that with everything. That's why it's very important to think about what you do, right? You should not be conscious of everything you do, because we do so much stuff subconsciously, so you don't even can be. But if you use a trick or want to achieve a certain outcome, be mindful of why you do it and that you don't do it too often, because most tricks can have certain, let's call this fallouts, that might not be the desired outcome you want. Players can become way too suspicious, way too trigger happy. You don't want to overuse the tricks because they could be problems from overusing them.
Yeah, it's like using a mimic too early and too many of them.
Yeah.
Because then your players will get suspicious of every inanimate object.
Yeah, exactly what I'm saying, right? These tricks, they can help you, and you should use them, and you should find the tricks that work for you and your table. But be mindful of when you use them, and also also very important, be mindful of what you already do, right? Maybe you do something that you didn't even consider a trick to achieve a certain outcome that actually achieves a certain outcome for you, right? Just like a DM could take a drink in the right moment, and that could mean something to their players. And theoretically, that could be interpreted as a trick you use to achieve a certain outcome in your players. So yeah, it's very hard to actually nail down what tricks we can talk about, because basically everything you do is a trick. Sometimes I stand up and walk outside the camera range and tell my players, you do something, I will have to take care of something real quick, and I actually don't do anything. I just take a step from the camera away to do some thinking, so they don't see me thinking, so I don't influence them in their current decision making, because most of the time when they do it's when they make a decision or when they roleplay, and I don't want to influence them, so I just take a step back. But obviously that also influences them, right?
Yeah, everything you do influences people in some sort of way.
Yeah.
Even if it's subconsciously or consciously. If you think about what you do, know what you want to achieve, but sometimes you just do things without any intention but achieve things anyway. So try to think about those a little more. So
now the question becomes, why is that? And I think that's very simple to answer, actually. Because TTRPGs are social games, right? You play these with people. They are meant to be played together. They are meant to be played to have fun together. So they are social games, right? The main part of them is talking to each other as the players. You communicate. And we know human communication is only done 50% by the words we speak, and 50% of gestures, mimicry, eye contact, and all of the things we do that are not talking. And those things are part of TTRPGs.
Yeah.
Your mimicry, your cadence, your tone, your volume, your speed in that you talk, your eye contact, your gestures, everything of that is part of TTRPGs, which is why I think that TTRPGs suffer greatly when you play virtually without a webcam.
Yeah, because facial expressions are a huge thing, and body language as a whole. Just all these communication parts just go out of the window in a game about communication.
Yeah, I'm not saying that you can't play them and can't enjoy them, because I did for nearly 2 years play a game without webcams on. But let's just say that the first session we were back, we were all very thrilled to just see each other talk.
Yeah.
Because that's how this works, right? You lose a lot of connection when you don't see someone talking. One of my players doesn't have a webcam, and when we would play online and everyone else had the webcam enabled, he was the odd one out. And there we lost communication with him. It was harder to communicate with him because we didn't know when he wanted to speak. We didn't see what he was actually mimicking, gesturing, or meaning. We just had his voice and his words to interpret, which is a lot of stuff lost in communication, actually.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that's why everything you do carries a certain sub-message to your players. And when you know what sub-message you carry to your players or send to your players, that's when you hit the gold mine, in my opinion, because you can control which sub-message you send without that being obviously bad. You can control what you want to convey to your players, but even more so than the people that just use their words.
Exactly, because if you use just words, you can express emotions and convey emotions, but you can't express, or you cannot express feelings or the tone of a conversation as good as with body language and facial expressions.
Yeah.
These are just general feeling or tone conveyors for conversations. You can interpret how someone feels just by the way they look at you, or the way their body language works, how they are standing, how they are sitting. If they are standing or sitting is a big one as well.
What I will say, though, is that you can easily convey all of these things, at least the in-game things, by descriptions.
Yeah.
So, for example, right, people play by post. There you don't even have the voice of your DM. You just see what they wrote in the chat or in the forum. And that style is still fun, even though you don't have the face-to-face. But I think that when perceiving that style, the DMs and the players go a lot more into a certain subtext, like, I want to do this, and then they describe how they want to do it, and they describe it as in a way that actually makes it vivid to the others.
Yeah.
They often put like things next to their voice when they talk in character, like shivers or is scared, So to actually convey that subtext, you can only convey by tone, pitch, and by the way you are talking.
Yeah.
To make that clear, because if not, that might get lost.
Definitely. And if you play some post by post, you have to describe your feelings by words, which in person or with webcams and voices, you can just convey it through the way you speak. You don't have to say these words that you would have to write on a post by post. Mm-hmm. So there are some benefits and drawbacks to both of those styles. Because if you, one drawback of this using your own tone and stuff could be the misinterpretation of the other part of the conversation. The thing you wanted to convey could be misinterpreted into something else. This is one thing that could happen. I don't say it has to happen, but it could happen. It's just a basic problem of communication in general. So yeah. Be mindful of that as well. Just putting it out there.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to present your first trick?
I can. My first GM cantrip would be silence. It doesn't sound like much because silence is a missing of sound, and the human brain wants to fill these soundless things, so they just keep on talking. If you want your players to talk about stuff, just be silent as a DM. You just spark up conversations and discussions about different topics when they ask you a question, like, is this right? Or did we do something right? Just say nothing.
That's something you can do. But I like it even more if you use it in descriptions. You describe something. You walk down the dark passage. The light of your torch is the only thing that gives you light. None of you have dark vision. And then you hear something. And just don't say anything for the next 4 seconds. And then say, well, what you heard was... Then you imitate the sound. You heard some rumbling up front in the tunnel. But your players go, what? In those 4 seconds you say nothing. They go they instantly turn to you. Their attention is fully at you at that moment.
Yeah, but I put this as a separate GM cantrip.
Oh.
Like pausing.
Okay.
Like a dramatic pause to emphasize the point you were making.
Mm-hmm.
And silence. Because silence, I would define, I should have said it earlier maybe, was or over a bigger time stretch.
Mm-hmm.
Not just small or a few seconds, but maybe even minutes. Let the players converse and think about and talk about their thought process of something or of your description of the town, for example. You describe the town and just don't say anything after all. You see a ruined town, burnt down houses, and some banners standing there with the emblem of the local noble family torn to pieces, and just stay silent. And then they start, okay, what happened? And you don't tell them because they don't know yet. And you want to spark their own imagination a bit. So you just keep your mouth shut and let their minds do the rest. And then they fill in the blanks with their own ideas. And then after they find some clues or ideas or hints or whatever, then you can give them bit by bit some information back, confirming or falsifying their theories.
What I think goes hand in hand with real DM silence is listening, right?
Yeah.
Because if you don't say anything, your players say something, right? You keep your mouth shut so your players can talk. So your players can discuss. They can do something. And listening is the best skill you can have as a DM, in my opinion, right? It's not a trick. It's just simple listening to your players. You need to know what they want to do. You need to understand what they do. You need to understand them. You need to listen to them to know what is up. You need to know what their character wants to do. That's why they are here, right? And listening is the best thing to do for that. You just listen to your players. Give them the time to speak. You don't need to speak as long as they want, right? You only need to speak when your players don't speak. That's the only moment you need to do something. Because as long as your players are talking, the game is being played in the way it was supposed to be played. So, I think most GMs should just shut the fuck up and listen to their players once in a while. Obviously, everyone does that, right? Everyone plays this game by listening to the players because you have to. Otherwise, you can't play and write it, right? If you're the only one talking at the table and you're the DM, you can write a book. That's the same. But your players play a character and listening to them, and especially listening to the subtext they are conveying. is important, because you can draw a lot from that. One of my players has a paladin that often is a little bit, how do I convey this best? He feels a lot, he doesn't talk much about his time as a paladin, as his actual time as a paladin.
Okay.
And why he is now here and not in duty, for example. And when he's asked why he is here and what's his purpose here, he said he avoids the question, right? But and from that you can read the subtext that he doesn't want to talk about that. Well, at least the character doesn't. The player has no problem at all, but the character doesn't want to talk about this. But you also read a subtext of way more from that, because how he conveys it by looking like my player. Again, I'm listening to them, even though he's not saying anything, but I'm listening to the body language he's having. The player looks down. He's ashamed of something. He doesn't want to talk about it because he's ashamed. That's something you only get when you actually stop to listen to that player and really focus on that player. And I, as the DM, know that. And now I can use that. Now I can use this as tool to create an awesome moment for that player, where he can feel cool, where he can feel drama, where he can feel anything, really. And I just have to set up, but I only can do that if I listen.
And you brought up an excellent point there, because you can, in those stretches of time where you don't talk, but just listen, already plan your next move. Build it out, detail it. You roughly have, or probably have, a rough idea what your evening is going to be.
Yeah.
But in these stretches where the players react to something you said in a longer period of time, you have the time, or all the time you need, to prep the next step. Maybe think of some words you would like to describe the next thing that is happening. Or just think of something that would even fit a little better, and then just use this instead. It's your world, you can do whatever you want. So this is something that could come just from shutting the fuck up.
Yeah, I mean, half of the time that DMs do anything is just to give them time to react.
Psst, you weren't supposed to tell that.
Nice.
Yeah,
but that is
general,
true, right? It's all about us trying to find a way to, in our head, construct the path ahead. Or construct the path enough so our players can actually take that path.
Yeah.
Or whatever path, right? Whatever path my players want. No bullshit of railroading and shit here.
Yeah, we need some time to figure out what the fuck we are going to do next, but we don't have that time if we have to talk all the time. So we need to create little bubbles and buy us time to figure this shit out.
One thing I will say, though, is if you as a DM ever need time to actually think on what's happening next, just ask for a break.
Yeah, obviously. Especially big decisions or really big plot influencing decisions need to be thought over a lot more than just, okay, I've planned a zombie for this, but a raider would fit much better than I would just use a raider. We're talking about these small fixes for in-game kind of small changes, not the big plot impacting decisions you need to make. These need to have a solid reason to be made this way for certain NPCs. Why did the villain choose this option A instead of option B needs to be thought over. But if he uses minion A or minion B is basically irrelevant.
Yeah, true. I want to move on to another point, because it's something we talked about already in the making sure that people understand why these tricks should be used and how they should be used. And that is voice changes. I mean, volume, pitch, tone, speed, everything you do with your voice that is not actually the words you speak. And that is important because you are the senses of your players or of their player characters. You are not the feelings. That's important, right? You don't tell your players how their character feels. That's for them to decide. But what you do is you're the senses, right? You convey what your players see, what they hear, what they smell, what they feel with their hands, and what they taste. You convey the situation to them, how it is, so they can make on that information decisions, right? They can make their decisions on that information. And that's why you need to be as true as you can in that, in the words you speak. The words you should speak shouldn't be lies, except when the world lies to them, right? When an NPC lies to them, that's okay. When there is an illusion and the characters think that there is a wall, even though there isn't one, you should describe it as there is a wall, because you convey the senses of the characters to the players, so the players can make the decisions with the brain of the character. Yeah. And that's why this is a big construct in TTRPG, right? It's a high social construct because you convey the senses of their characters to them so they can make the decision of their characters in your world. Boom. So what you can do, however, and how you can help your players convey, especially the feeling to the player, and what their characters should be feeling, or what the situation feels like outside of them, is your volume, your pitch, your tone, your way of speaking, your pauses, right? Everything you do with your voice.
Yeah, your resonance, for example.
Yeah,
Could
when
be
you
a huge thing.
when you go very low with your voice, that conveys a certain tone to your players, and they will interpret that.
Yeah.
When you go long words, right, that also conveys a tone to your players. And
if you speak really, really fast without really any pauses, that conveys a different message.
It all conveys a certain different sub-message, and you should be understanding what the sub-message is. And that's important to convey a certain feeling of a scene. So if a scene is very sad, because, for example, they are at the crime scene, right? They wanted to meet with their noble friend, and they find their noble friend stabbed in the back in their living room. Then you should convey the tone that scene has. You shouldn't be, hey, yay! You should be, well, your friend is dead. What do? You go a little bit. I go a little bit lower than my normal tone. I talk a little bit slower, because for people that just walked in on their friend killed, that's a lot to take in that moment. So you should you should be slower in talking, because that gives your players time.
The idea and the idea of what the scene should feel like.
Yeah. It gives an idea, and then from that, they can work on how does my character react, not only from the words, but also from the scene feeling. I think that was very important for me to say.
Yeah, I just want to put it out there, or say it. We don't mean accents or sound effects like pouring rain or character accents. We mean changing your own voice or your description voice to fit the tone of the scene, just as a clarity.
And it can be small effects, right? You don't have to do a big voice change, but you can do simple things. Go a little bit slower, draw the words out, or speak very high.
Yeah, or you could use a higher pitch, or up your resonance a bit, something like this. I'm not an expert voice actor. We both aren't.
We both aren't, yeah.
But yeah, you get the idea, I think.
Yeah, I think people get the idea.
So the next one I would like to talk about, we touched on earlier, is pausing. You mentioned it already, because it kind of fits with both a bit. Because pausing is basically silence within your voice changes or your tone changes. Because when you hear a good or an immersive description of a scene, and then suddenly there is a pause, players' brains will go into overdrive. They will think about every single thing that could happen. And even if you just pause for 2 or 3 seconds, this could feel for the players like a minute.
It's enough to get the brain of the player thinking. The thing is, in their mind, there shouldn't be a pause.
Exactly.
But you did pause.
So it has to mean something, right? Well, yes, it has to mean something. That's why you paused.
Yeah, I'm no expert on brains, I want to say that, but our human brain works a little bit like filling in the blanks, right? When we talk, our brain is normally faster than our mouth. I have the words that I want to say in my brain before they actually come out of my mouth. And the same is when someone else is talking to me, or when you're reading a text, right? That's why all of these fun illusions work, where you read a text and someone says read again, and then you read again and realize that there was a typo in that text, because your brain corrects that mistake instantly.
Yeah.
And that's why we also don't see typos in our own writing often, because our brain corrects them instantly. Because our brain thinks, well, this is wrong, I can correct it. Boom. And the brain, when someone describes something to you, your brain thinks ahead, because your brain is faster and thinks ahead. Okay, this is happening next. And then when the pause is there, your brain basically stumbles over itself. Why is there a pause? There should be this, or this, or this, or this. And why pausing?
Yeah, it just ups the tension to a different level. And then you resolve it with saying what actually happens after the pause. It is important to resolve the tension afterwards, because if you keep the tension that high, it could be hurtful for the whole scene. But after the pause, 1 to 4 seconds, longer than that would be torture. Longer than a 4-second pause would be torture. Just saying.
There's a good video of Matt Mercer doing this, where he is describing something and suddenly stops talking, and all the players, right? They take a second and then all look at Matt confused and scared, because they were like, why did you stop talking, bro?
Yeah, and it can even get some players that weren't listening 100% to what you were saying, back on track. Because if you're talking and describing a scene and some players chit-chatting between a little silently, not really paying attention to what you're saying, but the player brain is focused or is knowing that there is background noise of you telling something, and suddenly there isn't. That's something different. An irregularity. Why? And suddenly their attention shifts. And then you set back in.
One thing here, though, is don't use it too often, because that fades the illusion you create. If you use it too often, your players catch on to that the silence doesn't mean anything really now, or that this pause doesn't mean anything to them, because it's just you pausing to get their brain running and them attention and in their attention. So if you use it too often, you lose that, and also you lose the effect of what happens after, right? If you then after that, right, you describe and you're in this burned town and you look around the rubble and you find burned corpses, you find weapons, people have been fighting here, and then you hear the sound of dragon wings cutting through the air. And, well, the thing is, if you do that too often, then you won't have this big payout of your players going, oh, fuck, I knew it, after you tell them that it's a dragon that's flying through the air right now.
Yeah, pausing is not an every session kind of cantrip you should use.
No, yeah, it should only be really used if you feel like it's right in that moment.
Yeah, especially at big plot reveals is a good way, I think, in important story moments, or if something dramatic to the players, or if something dramatic happens to the players.
Yeah.
These are the times you should or could use it to good effect. If you use it just in a marketplace and you see a weapon trader, that's something, yeah.
The tension you create isn't paying out, right?
Exactly.
One thing that is adjacent to that I wanted to talk about is one of the things that probably every DM has done in their life, will do again, and everybody knows. It's the funniest little gimmick that every DM has ever used. It's rolling dice without a meaning behind them.
Oh yeah.
Behind the screen.
Oh yeah, that's a fun one.
And now, and coming out and saying it, it's kind of overused.
Yeah.
It's kind of, everyone does it, and nobody knows really why they do it. But there is a reason, right? Or at least there has to be. Why would our brain think that's okay? Well, it creates the same thing. It makes them attentive. The sound of rolling dice where there is no meaning behind the dice or no apparent reason behind the dice, right? They could actually do mean something, the dice. That's the problem players have. They don't know if these dice mean anything or don't. Every player knows DMs roll dice for no reason at all behind their screen. Everyone knows that but there could be a meaning, and that's the problem.
And something fun to use in tandem is asking for passive perception.
That's something I want to go into in a bit, but this rolling dice is very interesting to me because it makes them attentive. But what can that actually mean? Rolling dice behind the screen. Well, you could roll on the next random encounter, for example. But what it also does is it doesn't only make your players attentive, because either you roll for the next random encounter, you roll for an NPC or for a hidden creature that your players don't see. It makes them suspicious.
Yeah.
It actually creates a very feeling of, okay, something is going on here. I should be mindful of what is happening. I should watch out. And then they might ask, hey, can I make a perception roll to see if we are being chased or followed or watched? You create the feeling of being chased or watched. And now, next time, do that when there's actually, the reason behind the rolling dice is not to roll the perception check for that creature that is chasing them, but actually because a creature is chasing them and you want your players to start getting the feeling of, okay, wait, we are being watched or something, right? These dice rollings are often done without a reason behind them, but they could actually be done with a reason behind. And
even if you don't roll on a table, even if the dice roll you made doesn't have a specific outcome, the
number doesn't mean anything.
Exactly.
But the sound of dice rolling can create a certain feeling in your players, a certain attention, a suspiciousness. Even like now we're coming into the fallout of that paranoia. If you do it too often and it actually always means something, you create paranoia.
Yeah.
Because your players then, when they go with this roll, okay, we need to do this to check if we are being chased, followed, watched, if we are possessed by ghosts or whatever, right? They will make a checklist more or less of the things you've done before and check those things. So don't do it too often, but rolling the dice not only gets your players' attention, it makes them suspicious of the situation they are in. If they're walking in a dark, cold swamp and you roll on a dice table and they are walking through this swamp and that dice roll more or less gets translated to character hearing some rustling in the bushes behind them. That is kind of what you do with the dice rolling for your players. They become attentive. What is happening? And this what is happening, this gets conveyed to their characters more or less. Because the players play their characters and they go, what is happening? Why is that bush rustling? Right? It's less obvious than that because there is nothing in the bush, maybe, but you get what I'm saying, right? You create a feeling of suspicion in your players that gets carried to the characters. And you can use that to convey that to the characters. You don't want to convey it necessarily to the players, but to the characters. Boom, you're being followed without actually saying you're being followed. But okay, you roll a dice. Okay, mark that down. And your players go, okay, why did you roll? And you say, oh, you don't know. And they go, okay, we need to find out why, right?
Yeah.
Use that more to your advantage.
Yeah, and I want to ask you a question regarding that.
Okay.
Would you put rolling dice behind the screen or secretly put in the same category as asking your players to roll a dice for you?
That's one of the things, right? I have one last point next to my other points, and that is talking to the players. And that includes asking your players something, and that would also include letting them roll a dice. But yes, that is also adjacent to that.
Because I have thought of a dick move basically to do.
Okay.
Ask your player to roll a d20 for you for no reason at all. Just for rolling the dice. At the end of a session, by the way. Let them tell you the outcome and just say noted and end the session there.
Okay, but I do that.
Yeah, it's a powerful move that creates suspicion and paranoia, but I like it.
It creates a fake feeling of mystery for the next session, right?
Exactly.
It creates a certain feeling for the next session, makes your players want to come back to find out what that dice means.
Yeah. But you can't use it at the end of every session because then it gets watered down.
Yeah, exactly. It's quality over quantity every time with these tricks. You need to know when to use them, and when you use them right, it's much of a bigger payout than doing it every session. But yeah, letting your players roll a dice is something I use very often. I have, for example, what I did for a certain type of thing. I know if this is maybe not the best example, but I let them roll the weather for the next day. They were supposed to defend a town. We had this 2-3 session base defense base defense game where they were supposed to build this village up to defend against gnoll attacks. And they did. And I said, okay, well, one of the big things that influences your effectiveness that day is the weather. So one of you roll me a straight d20 on this weather chart I have here, which gets randomized every day to make it not simply rolling high means this, rolling low means this, just this gets randomized every time. Yes, I am that type of DM. I love doing this. I have programming experience, right? I'm a programmer by day, so it's very easy for me to make a program that randomizes me a list of 20 points.
Yeah.
It's very easy. And yeah, and then letting them roll and decide the outcome of the next day creates, because I let them roll before they went to sleep. And then the next day I started the description of the day. Okay, it's raining, it's pouring. Oh, there's a storm now. And that creates a very interesting not foreshadowing, but mystery for the next day, because they don't know yet how the next day is gonna go. And that's why they want to find out.
Yeah. And it gives the player some sort of agency.
Yeah,
even if it is just illusory agency.
It gives the feeling such an illusion of control, right? Having to be the one that rolls the dice at the sides for example, the next day. Because one player once rolled a storm, right? One of the worst, he rolled a 20, and then 20 was basically work is impossible. Everyone needs to stay inside the whole day. And the others didn't want to let the player roll after that. The player loved the control they had over the day.
Yeah.
And the day was amazing. The players roleplayed that whole day in the little cabins they were in, and that was great. But the others didn't want to let that player roll again, even though it's a straight 20, right?
Yeah.
Marv says irrelevant who rolls. Everyone has the same chances, but no, they didn't want to let them roll again.
But the dice gods have forsaken him. We
dice
can't let him roll again.
Yeah, exactly.
The dice suspicions. I mean, that's why we have dice jails. You behaved badly. You belong in the dice jail now. The probability was 5% to roll a 1. You did that. And you did that again, which is a very low probability, but it can happen. So, okay, you are cursed. You belong in the dice jail now.
Yeah, dice need to be blessed.
Let's go. Yeah.
Okay. And now I want to go into actually asking your players something. Yeah. And there's the next big thing people talk about. Are you sure? Which is the biggest DM question you will ever hear in your life. And also asking your players what they want. Or one thing I want to put into this as well, because I think it's my last point at least. I don't know if you have anything left. But the thing about this is also reminding your players of something. Remind them, you actually still have that. You have item X. You know that NPC X did this. And both of these, asking your players, are you sure? And reminding them of something are more or less going to the same direction for what you want to achieve. And that's what you want to achieve is your players rethink their actions, right? When you actually ask, are you sure? And you actually ask the question with the meaning, are you sure? And not just for lulz, then you ask them to reconsider. You ask them, do you really want to do this? Have you thought about the outcome of this? And right, the thing is, it's not like a lot of people, I've heard people say, don't ask this question because your players should have thought about the outcome. And yeah, I agree, right? You shouldn't ask this question every time. But I believe that when we play a game and I invite my players, my 6 players to playing with me for example, 8 hours now, which is our monthly session, I invite them over to play. The thing about that is, though, if one of the players does something that could potentially destroy the fun of everyone else around the table for an hour, I waste the time of the people that came to the table, that made time to come here and play. And I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying, right, stop your players from doing the dumb action, because the dumb actions are most often the most fun ones. But if they are actually doing something that could potentially destroy the game, can ask them, are you sure? This is just pacing control. You want to control the pace of the game so everyone gets the fun they want from this game. And that's okay. I fully understand not doing this too often because you don't want to control your players. You can't control their characters, but you can ask, are you sure?
Mm-hmm.
You can also ask that question just to give yourself 5 to 10 seconds of consideration time before your player says yes. And then you have the thing that happens to go. The player says, okay, I want to jump into this volcano. And you're like, are you sure about that? And the player goes, yeah, I am sure. That's the time you have to think about what happens when they jump into the volcano, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Another great question, I think, is, or another frequently used question is, so you're touching it?
Yeah, exactly.
Even by mundane items sometimes.
Yeah. They just give you time to think, but also make sure your players think about the action they're wanting to take, right? You also want to make them actually think about it. Like, don't do this just because you think it's funny. Think about what you're actually doing. That's why we're here, right? That's why I use that question. I want to make my players realize why they actually use this action. And I'm not saying don't do this because of the fallout. I'm still doing this because, like, are you really sure? Like, why would you do this?
Please think about it.
Yeah.
And really think about it.
Yeah. And also reminding them, like I said, is basically important because sometimes, for example, now in a murder mystery, that's rather fresh for both of us as a topic on this podcast. It's okay to remind your players of certain things because players are not characters. Yeah. They might not remember everything their character remembers. So you can remind them. You actually still have item whatever, right? Which might give them a direction to go if they don't have a direction to go right now as players. They don't know what to do next. Tell them, you have this item. Didn't you want to talk to someone about that? And then they go, oh yeah, right, we should do that. And no, that's not railroading. That's making sure your players get to have fun.
Yeah.
Because if they don't see that option, they just stand still and do nothing. And that's not fun.
And it's nudging the players, not setting them on rails and giving the go, but it's nudging the players in some sort of direction. Mm-hmm. You still give them the option to say, yeah, we do that later, or no, we don't do that at all. It's just, here, you have that. Don't forget that you have that, but do with the information whatever you want.
Yeah.
Just making sure everybody has the information that their character has. And one question you can always ask is for passive perception or passive insight that might instill some sort of, okay, maybe I want to look around. Do I see anything? Are we being followed? Or, do I think this person is telling the truth? Or is something up with him or her or they or whatever? You know, it's just instilling some sort of action in your player characters by asking for some information from the character sheet.
Yeah.
I have one more thing.
Okay, hit me.
And that would be interrupting. You shouldn't do it too often because it disrupts the flow of a conversation between characters, but it can create a lot of tension and urgentness, if you say it like that. Urgentness? I think. Yeah, whatever.
It's a
you
word
get what
now.
I'm saying. Because you are disrupting the flow of a conversation by intersecting with your own description of something that immediately happens while they are saying exactly what they are saying right now. They have to act on a specific thing that is happening right now, and then even put a timer on their decision to make it a snap decision. While they are talking in the tavern, suddenly a meteor falls through the roof of the tavern and half of the tavern is just gone. What do you do? 10 seconds later, what do you do? Okay, nothing, next one. Something like this, just to create an urgent situation.
Yeah, I mean, it's important, right? Because in these moments of hectic, of urgentness, of action, you could say, you don't have a lot of time to act. Make that clear to your players without being an asshole and limiting their turns, for example, right? I don't like people that say, well, my players only have 30 seconds for their 6-second turn in game. I'm like, no, some players may need longer. Some players want to describe their action. Some players might even need to think because they're new. But let the characters not have time to do stuff, right? Boom, the meteor crashes through the tavern room. People scream. Things are starting to burn. You hear another explosion. What do you do? Boom, next, boom, next, boom, next.
Yeah.
And yeah, like you said, you create this feeling of urgentness without actually being a dick to your players. You let them do what they want to do, but you make it clear that they don't have a lot of time to act as characters. Tell them, this is quick. You need to do this quick. You need to do this now. And players, most of the time, are very quick to catch on to that. Okay, fuck, we don't have time. Let's do this, this, and this.
Yeah.
Boom. No
and
questions
even if they
asked.
don't do something in the first, at the first time you ask them to do something, it would be the classic shock second. If something unexpected happens, you just have to take a second to realize and take everything in what is happening right now. It is nothing bad that you don't, with lightning fast reflexes, instantly do something. You still have to take in all what is surrounding you and seeing the situation as a whole. So you can then act according to the situation. That's something that is just a normal thing to do. Just take a step back. What the hell is happening? What is going on? Okay, let's go. Let's do this, and this. Yeah.
So I think we've talked about a lot of stuff DMs can do to create certain things at the table. I want to recap actually only one thing, because you have heard the tips now. Please be mindful of when you use them and why you use these tips or tricks or whatever. When you do something, you don't have to be mindful of everything, but like when you take the decision to smile at your players for no apparent reason, that will trigger something in them and that influences them. And if you only do that to for the lulz, that's fun. Okay, yeah, you can do that, right? No harm really is being done. But you need to know why you're doing this, what it creates, and when to do it to actually have to get a desired outcome from it, right?
Yeah.
If you smile at your players all the time, smiling isn't the best trick you can use because your players might not catch on to it at that moment, right? You need to just be mindful of what you do and when you do it, and you will create a certain feeling, and be mindful of that as well, what you create. And yeah, then you have everything to go. Do whatever you want. Play with a fidgeting toy. Play with your phone. Search something up. Say, I need to look into my notes. Take a drink. Take a sip from your drink. Go out of screen when you're on the webcam. All of these things are tricks, and we haven't talked about those, but they can still create a certain outcome. Think about what outcome you may be creating with that when you do something. And you will find that you have so many possibilities next to the words you're saying as a DM to create feelings, scenes, and epic moments in your game.
I think this is a perfect closing statement for this episode. Yeah. And with that, follow us on social media at DoubleDM especially on Twitter, Instagram, and visit our website www.doubledm.com and hear you on the next one. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.